How's it going, everyone? Today we have a crazy story time, an absolutely crazy story that starts when parents figure out or finds one of the subscribers' friends' search history. Like many of the other search history videos, that's where everything goes downhill. But this story has so many twists and turns that I know you'll enjoy it. So leave a like on the video right now to claim your free nothing. Subscribe if you're new to the channel and like stories. With that being said, let's get into this absolutely crazy search history video. This one might be the craziest story I've told on the channel in a long time, so buckle up. So we're going to call the subscriber Ben. Yes, I just wanted to give a break to all the people who watch me, who your name is Ben. I always make the bad guy in the stories Ben, or I guess this guy. The two characters in the story aren't necessarily one guy's good, one guy's bad, but I always make the antagonist Ben. So right now, the protagonist be called Ben. Anyways, Ben had a friend, and we're going to call this friend Jake. So Jake was quiet, slightly socially awkward, but it was his best friend, right? I'm not using that as a dig or anything. I'm just using that to really give some good context so you guys know what's going on. He was into gaming, and this kid was always online. So Jake and Ben kind of became friends because they were in the same class in school, and they kind of struck up a conversation, and they spoke about how they both liked playing Fortnite. So then all of a sudden they'd, start hopping on Fortnite together, and then they just ended up playing for hours every single night. So they would hang out a little bit in school at first, but they would hang out for hours online. And through those hours online, they actually figured out that they were pretty cool with each other, and they actually became pretty quick friends. Anyways, this story all happened when Jake's mom decided to borrow his iPad one night to look up a recipe. And Jake tells Ben all about this. So anyways, this happens. Jake calls it up, or Ben calls up Jake while they're playing a game of Fortnite. Very standard night. But this is when Jake starts explaining to Ben an interesting story. So anyways, Jake's online, they're playing Fortnite, whatever. He's like, man, can I tell you this story? It's kind of crazy. And so Ben's like, yeah, man, what's up? And Jake's like, yeah. So anyways, I had my iPad and my mom asked to borrow it, right? To look up a recipe or something, totally normal, totally fine. But dude, I totally forgot to close out my search history. I had a Safari tab open. And okay, so when he said this, right, immediately Ben's mind went to, oh boy, oh no, you know what I mean? Oh man, buddy, what were you looking up? What kind of sus-ass search history do you have? What kind of nonsense do you have in there? Or do you have something like how to cheat on my final exams with ChatGPT, best tips on Reddit or something like that? So he already kind of knew the direction that the story was going where his mom borrowed his iPad to look at something, and then all of a sudden, she sees all these search history results, starts getting all upset, starts going crazy, all that kind of stuff. But it actually took a twist that you guys, the viewers, might not expect, and I definitely didn't expect when I got this story. So anyways, Jake's still kind of freaking out, and because it happened a day or two before, and he was like, yeah, and I was in the other room, I was about to hop on Fortnite. Do you remember a couple days ago when I couldn't hop on Fortnite with you? And Ben's like, yeah, dude, I kind of remember. I was kind of bummed. I ended up playing myself, but, wasn't as fun when I don't play with you. He's like, yeah. So basically that day, so I go back to my room because mom's like, hey, can I borrow your iPad? She yells in from outside, and I yell back from my room while gaming saying yeah, go ahead. I don't really care. But little did I know I didn't close out my search history. And I'm sitting in my room, I'm playing Fortnite, and all of a sudden I hear my mom call my dad into the room, which usually doesn't happen. And I could just kind of tell that it wasn't what do you think of this recipe I'm looking up? It was pretty clearly something was up. So I start getting nervous, but I also tell myself it's really nothing to worry about. I'm about to hop on game, doesn't really matter. It's chilling, we're chilling, it's not that deep. But, then my parents come into my room, they start confronting me, and dude, my parents think I'm trying to fake my own death or something. Okay, so Ben was totally taken off guard by this because he was kind of expecting, oh, you looked up sus videos, haha, whatever, or something like that. So Ben's like, wait, because they're playing Fortnite right now. He's like, bro, what? He's a little bit distracted. I think Ben was in the middle of playing some Fortnite move or something and kind of just assumed that he misheard him. So he's like, yo, what do you mean by that, bro? Fake your own death? That sounds a little deep. You know what I'm saying? I don't. Can you explain that to me a little bit more? And so Ben thought, he was joking or trolling him or something like that. You know what I'm saying? But Ben goes on, or Jake goes on to say, he's like, yeah, like they're listing this. They sat me down. They listed the searches, and my searches was like how to disappear without a trace, fake ID, dark web, birder phones near me. Dude, my parents were grilling. They were just grilling me, bro. It was absolutely crazy. Like they were asking all these questions, and while Jake was saying this, Ben, who was playing Fortnite with him, was like, wait, what? In his head, he's like, yeah, if I was a parent too, I would absolutely say something about this dude. Like, what do you mean? Like, if I had my son there and he was looking up how to disappear, fake ID, dark web, all that kind of stuff, like, bro, what? No. That isn't some like standard search activity. That's like something kind of crazy. Like, what's going on? So like, Ben didn't want to press Jake too hard, but he was like, yeah, dude, like, I mean, I can kind of get why your parents are worried. And Ben almost like didn't snap back at him, but he's like, dude, no. Or Jake didn't snap back at him, but he's like, no, dude, they're overreacting. It's crazy, man. It's crazy. Like, I can't have any privacy in my own house. Like, I let him use my iPad, and then, it's ridiculous. And, Ben wasn't so certain that was so ridiculous. And that was the first seed that planted this kind of story that's going to unfold slowly, and it only gets crazier. So at this point, Ben starts keeping tabs on Jake, because it was almost weirdly how casually Jake dropped that on him, expecting him to agree with him. Or did Jake expect him to agree with them? Maybe what Jake was doing was he was almost like a cry out for help. Maybe. But also at this point, it's really not clear to Ben what is even going on. So over the next few weeks, some really weird stuff begins to happen. So the first thing, maybe Ben would have noticed these small details if it wasn't for the story that Jake told him about the search history right before. But Ben notices Jake's just acting off. One, he's tired, which honestly isn't that out of the usual. I mean, if you guys are gamers too, you already know, like, sometimes the game's really good. In the moment, I will say that, like, staying up really late, if not pulling an all-nighter for playing a game, it feels so fun in the moment, but it's the biggest mistake. Never do that. I've done that like once. It's the worst idea ever. So, look, to be fair, Jake's been tired at school before. This isn't like some crazy out-of-the-blue situation, but he just seems more tired than usual. He also seems paranoid, which, by the way, if you get really bad sleep or you're pulling all-nighters, you're going to have much higher anxiety levels just across the board. You're going to tweak out. If you don't sleep for a certain amount of time, you actually, like, your brain starts to hallucinate a little bit. Like, it's not unreasonable, but here's the thing. They've been playing Fortnite less and less over the weeks. They still hopped on nearly as long, but instead of playing like 5 or 6 or 7 games, they play 1 or 2. And then Jake would always be like, hey, I got to go do work. Which was weird, because why was he acting more tired, more paranoid, more on edge than usual when he wasn't gaming till 3 in the morning? Because, also Ben started to check in like, is he online? No. So at first Ben's like a little bit confused, but maybe he's like, oh man, maybe he just found a new game. Maybe there's a new game that's solo or single player. He just doesn't really like Fortnite anymore. Maybe he doesn't like me anymore. I don't know, dude. But I'm a little worried for this guy. But a little bit later in the week, Jake and Ben have the same math teacher. And as Ben's walking out of class, the math teacher's like, hey, Ben, can you stick around for a second? Ben's totally confused because he's like, I have a 92 in this class. I've attended every class, and I don't cheat on my exams, so I don't know why I'm being pulled aside. Maybe it's to say, hey, keep up the good work, buddy, but I got a feeling that is not the case. Math teacher pulls him aside and says, hey, I haven't really, is Jake good? And Ben's so taken off guard by this because Ben had his own suspicions that something was kind of up with Jake. But he didn't, it was almost like, when someone, confirms something you've been believing? Because, when you're thinking about something in your head, you're like, I could be overreacting. I could be thinking too deeply into this. I could be this. I could be that. But now all of a sudden, it's like when someone outside comes in and confirms it, it just, you just realize that, oh, my God, I'm not being crazy. I'm not overthinking. I'm not, grasping for straws or anything. And Ben's like, yeah, I think Jake's good. I mean, he's seemed a little bit tired recently, and I don't really know why, but I can't say, I don't really know anything more. And the math teacher looks at Ben and is like, yeah, let's keep an eye on him. Sometimes I know you guys feel like, I just stand up there and teach, but, I see you guys every single day and I can kind of tell when something's off. So that was very ominous. It's not like the math teacher knew anything about the future of the story, or at least that'd be a crazy plot twist if they did. But something was clearly off and the math teacher could just sense it. So Ben senses it, the math teacher senses it, but it's not at a point where Ben can really go up to Jake and say anything. So over the next couple of weeks, Jake had just not really been in the math class. Like, he would show up late sometimes, but he just really wouldn't be there, which when you're in high school, that's pretty bad. In college, it's a little different sometimes. But high school, it's like, oh, okay. Geez. And also, so word started to kind of spread around the school that, Jake had been, sneaking out during lunch and just not coming back. So not only has he been, sorry. The word had been spreading around. I get these stories submitted to me on Instagram. I write down little bullet points and I tell the rest. So I mixed up a little bullet point there. But word had been spreading that Jake had not only been skipping class for the math class that, Ben and Jake had together, Jake had also been kind of like dropping off on random other classes. But here's the thing that Ben didn't know at the time. Apparently, Jake had been sneaking out during lunch and then not coming back. So the times that he was in math class, because they had the math class before lunch, he just would not go to any class after that because he would sneak out and leave lunch. So something is seriously up. Okay, around the same time, I'm introducing a new character into the story. A girl named Emily had quietly transferred schools, and she used to hang out with Jake a lot. So that's a really important part of the story because, people are starting, it's not only just Ben, it's not only just Ben's math teacher that Jake also had, it's now starting to be basically everyone in the school is starting to realize something is up, buddy, something is up. So once again, circling back to this girl, Emily, right, who had quietly transferred schools, and Jake and her used to hang out a lot, and now she's just gone. No one knows where she is. So Ben starts hearing, because, the high school rumor mill, man, that's a content machine that keeps pumping. The high school rumor mill, bro, they go for it. The rumors will start flying. So sure enough, right, people start connecting the dots because this girl, Emily, disappears out of nowhere. And then Jake starts falling off the map, right? He still shows up in little bits and pieces. And if anything, at this point, when Jake shows up to class, there's a time, it's a scene when Jake shows up to class, basically, dude. Anyways, so now rumors were crazy. One rumor was that Jake got this girl, Emily, pregnant or something, so she had to go take care of the child, and then he has to, dip out all the time. Another one that Jake, threatened someone, and that, Jake was expelled, but the school was, trying to hide it, so, he'd show up to some classes for social reasons. Even though Jake was, he was a quiet, nerdy gamer kid who was kind of socially awkward. This was not some kid who was going to get into some fight, This is not, he could have gotten her pregnant. Stuff happens, man. Try not to do that, chat. But, things happen, but it still didn't seem in character. And Ben, out of all these kids, probably knew Jake the best. And it was a small enough school that people noticed when someone dropped off, and people knew each other pretty well. But, at the same time, Ben just knew, none of these things made sense. Jake didn't get in a fight with someone. Why would Jake be getting expelled? He was a good student. He didn't cheat on anything. Why would he need to do that? He didn't get this girl pregnant. Her and Emily, him and Emily were close, but to Ben's knowledge, they were never dating. They were never doing anything like that. So it was just really, really confusing. So this is where, things start to get a little bit weird. Ben is sitting down with one of his friends. We'll call him Alex. And Alex knew Jake. They were closer when they were younger, and then they kind of grew apart. As friendships happen. And honestly, chat, it's not, I keep calling you chat, sorry. I stream on YouTube every single day. Connor Pugs my YouTube. If you're watching this on Spotify, if you're in YouTube, make sure notifications are on so you don't miss the streams. I'm starting to get used to calling you guys chat, sorry. Ben was sitting down with his friend Alex, who's cool with Jake before. They grew apart, which happens. There's nothing wrong with growing apart with a friend. Sometimes there's people are in your life for a season or a reason or just a moment. And sometimes it's a season and there's nothing wrong with that. Don't ever don't ever feel bad about something like that. But Alex was like, yo, dude, as soon as they sit down, Ben's like, what's up? He's like, yeah, I feel kind of weird. Like, Jake's been kind of weird lately. And Ben's like, I know. And they kind of talk about all the things that Ben had been noticing and all the things I brought up to you. And Jake's like, yeah, I kind of noticed some of that stuff too. It's good to know about the other stuff. But really only reason I brought this up, bro, was like yesterday, like it was immediately after lunch, like I was walking to class, but like I just want to get it I just want to step outside for some fresh air. I don't know, like my teacher's kind of chill, like it's okay if I'm a little late. And I saw Jake getting into a weird car after the school. It wasn't like an Uber, it wasn't a Lyft. It also wasn't his parents' car because like, unless his parents got a new car recently, like, Jake and I used to be close. And that's just like not his car. Also, why are they picking him up at, 1? School ends at 3:30, bro, like, or 2:30 or whatever. Like, it's kind of weird. So at this point, Ben's really just like, I don't know. He's starting to feel weird. And Ben and Jake hadn't had a gaming session for a little bit of time now. It's been a second since they've gone on a gaming session. But randomly, Jake texts him. He says, yo, dude, you want to hop on Fort? And Ben's like, yeah, man, 100%. Partially because it's been about a week and a half. And in this last week and a half, Ben has become progressively more and more worried about what's up with his friend. You know what I'm saying? So anyways, they're on the game. It's about like 2 minutes of small talk. And then finally, Jake confesses to everything. Real quick, if you made it this far into the video, comment Fortnite in the comment section. That'll be the secret word of the day to let me see how many people, the names and faces of the people who made it this far into the video. If you're on Spotify or on YouTube, make sure to comment that. If you're on Spotify, make sure you've rated the podcast 5 stars. Hit follow. If you're on YouTube, make sure you're subscribed with notifications on because I stream every single day. And if you're on YouTube or you're listening to Spotify and you also subscribe to my YouTube, consider hitting the join button next to my channel icon and becoming a channel member. It supports the channel, but the benefits that you get custom emotes in the chat and also in the comment section. I will add you to a private group chat on Instagram that I talk to every single day. So if you want to talk to me personally or make sure your stories get told 100%, become a channel member, message me on Instagram with a screenshot of you doing that. I will add you to the chat. Also, for the first couple hundred, I will follow you back, and I have over 1 million followers on there, and actually Instagram themselves has shouted me out, so it could be a pretty cool flex. I'm also going to be adding a ton more benefits for channel members, and I really do appreciate the support. And if you don't want to become a channel member, but you still want to get your message across, if you leave a comment as a donation or a super chat comment, it'll appear as a blue comment or a green comment or something. The first person to do that in every single one of my videos, I will pin. Anyways, with that being said, let's just hop right back into it. Jake finally confesses to Ben during one of their late night gaming sessions. So this all goes back to the character I introduced earlier named Emily. So a little bit of a content warning. I'm not going to go into brutal details of anything. If anything, I'm going to be very hand-wavy with the details. But if anything regarding difficult home lives are not the type of content that you want here, the majority of the story is not going into that, but it does mention it, then I have plenty of other stories on my channel. If you're on YouTube, there's plenty of stories in the recommended. If you're on Spotify, I have thousands of stories that you can also listen to. Anyways, with that out of the way, essentially, Jay confesses everything. Emily had a very, very, very difficult home life. And I'm just going to more or less leave it with that. The parents were not being good in the most extreme sense. Jake also did not trust the system to help her because this has been something that's been going on for a while. Jake and Emily bonded over Emily being able to, learning who Jake was, getting to know him, and then being one of the few people that she confesses to. And Jake, over the years, had seen the system fail her, where, report it to someone, they'd have a check-in, and then things would just get worse. They'd maybe get better for a second, but then they would just simply get worse. She also told Jake that her parents were tracking her phone. So not only was this something where she couldn't escape, or not only was this a bad situation, but she couldn't escape. She's being tracked every second, surveilled every moment, and it was a bad situation. Essentially, she came to the conclusion that she had to disappear completely. During this time as well, Jake and Emily bonded very closely. I think it was implied, as I'm reading between the lines, that they were in some kind of relationship, but they were at least in some kind of deep bond over this traumatic experience that she was going through. And Jake felt so strongly that was his obligation to help. Jake came up with an insane plan to fake both of their deaths and run away together. I'm going to let that sit for a second. Guys. Wow. That explains the search history. That explains everything up to this moment. And at this point, Ben is just sitting on call. No, dead, silent, no answer. He was absorbing what he was hearing, and it was so much. So the sketchy searches, the burner phones, the dark web stuff, Jake was really deep into planning this. Also, Jake had been saving up money from being a tutor, odd jobs, and Ben was aware of the catch. Because Ben would see this guy grinding on the weekends, and then when they were playing Fortnite, Ben would be like, oh, dude, do you want to get the new skin? And Jake's like, nah, I'm broke. And at first, Ben was like, okay, well, he just doesn't want to spend his money on dumb Fortnite skins. I can understand that. That's not crazy. It's it's a dumb Fortnite skin. I understand why you don't want to spend all your money on it. Totally understandable. But the reason was he probably wanted the Fortnite skins. They played all the time. But the actual reason was that he was saving up money for this. Jake was going to fake a drowning, which is crazy. Emily would then vanish. So Ben is totally stunned. And after about a minute of just silence, they're just kind of playing Fortnite in silence, he starts to beg not to go through with it. And he's like, Jake, but there's more answers out there. Think about your parents, think about the community, think about all that kind of I know that she's in a terrible situation. You got to help, but there are other people in this situation and they do get out. Can we please explore more options before you do something so drastic like this? There's no turning back. There's really no turning back if you do this. And okay, Jake essentially was it's already in motion. And they kind of talk through it. And Ben's like, well, there has to be other ways to go about this. There has to be more things. And Jake's like, you don't think I've exhausted those resources? You don't think that I've tried to do everything in my power to help here? It's you don't think that I've done my best in this situation and that you think this is option number one. And Ben's like, no, dude, I know that you've been here for her. I know that you've tried everything else. And I hope that you know how extreme this is, but there has to be something else. And Jake basically is like, man, this is probably going to be one of our last gaming sessions together, if not the last. I'm going to do this. I'm going to go through with this. And I need you not to tell me. Obviously, if you tell people, then the whole thing blows up and we're in trouble and she's still in a bad situation, if not a worse one. I can't imagine what her parents would do if they figured out she was trying to escape this bad. And I needed to tell you because you're my closest friend and I didn't want to just vanish on you. And Ben's kind of sitting there okay, bro, I appreciate that, but also now I got to hold this guilt in this crazy story with me for the rest of my life. You don't think this is kind of dropping a bomb on me too? Honestly, he should have just done a Michael Scott where, spoiler for The Office, if you haven't seen it, but you probably have, Michael Scott eventually leaves the office. And the whole thing is on his last day, he says, oh, I'm going to leave tomorrow. Let's plan a party for my going away. But let's have today just be a normal day where I can have a normal day and do everything I want. And spoiler alert, but Michael leaves by the end of that day because the only thing he wanted was a perfect last day where everything was normal. And I think it's good that Jake told this to Ben because the story would have gone very differently if it wasn't. But if it should have been something where, if Jake was really thinking this through, I think partially Jake wanted to cry out to help because he felt like he was in too deep. But assuming he really wanted to go through with it, have one last great time with Ben and then disappear forever. But thankfully he didn't do that. So anyways, Ben gets off the game. It's like 1 a.m. and his mind's racing a mile a minute. He knocks on so Ben is an older brother. We'll call him Will. Will's a senior. They're both sophomores in high school. Ben and Jake are, but Will's a senior. He knocks on the door. Will gets up. He's like, bro, it's 1 a.m. I don't game late like you guys. I got to get up early. Ben's basically in the brink of tears. He's like, can I just talk to you? And Will's like, oh, yeah, okay. I think he just thought he was trolling or asking for something stupid, but he could tell very quickly it's serious. So he sits down. Ben tells his older brother, Will, everything. Will's like, whoa. Like, you need to do something here. And Ben's like, I can't. Like, I can't break his trust. He's like, dude, like, I know I'm only 2 years older than you, but, like, you're going to know looking back on this, you had to tell someone. Like, this is beyond your friendship. And Ben's almost like kind of begging his brother Will not to tell anyone. Will's like, look, you did the right thing. You told me. I'm going to do whatever I think is right here, and you can have the peace of mind that you didn't do anything. You just told me. You didn't tell anyone else. And Ben kind of is like, okay, because Ben, I think, didn't want to break his friend's trust, but he also knew what was right. So anyways, Will, very early the next day at 6 a.m. when he wakes up, he has like very bad sleep that night because Will had to think it through, gets both of, Ben and his parents, just sits them down, tells them everything. It was pretty crazy. The parents then called Jake's parents. And they called Jake's parents saying, like, hey, like, this is really important. I need you to meet me at a coffee shop. Like, I know this is really crazy, but, like, you can't tell anyone you're going. And they're like, this is weird. And they're like, trust me. So anyways, Ben's parents tell Will's parents exactly what's going on. And it was supposed to be that night. And actually, so anyways, they know that night Jake sneaks out. But what Jake doesn't know is that his parents know. So his parents follow him to this park. And sure enough, right, Emily's there waiting. She has a duffel bag. It's like they're there waiting ready to escape to go to Paris together or something. I don't even know where where they were going. I never got told when someone told me the story to tell for the channel. I wasn't even told what their plans were. And sure enough, right, Jake's parents step out. And Jake is just standing there. Emily's just standing there. Turns on to a full-on confrontation. They're not fighting or anything, but they're just freaking out because they know the truth. And they caught him in the act, right? And eventually Jake breaks. He tries to be like, no, you guys are crazy. Like, I shouldn't sneak out. But I'm just hanging out with my girlfriend, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But there's too much evidence. They know the truth. Jake eventually breaks down, admits everything. And, sure enough, right? They're like, all four of them, Jake's parents, Jake and Emily, they go to the police, whatever, and they kind of tell parts of the story. They're like, they were trying to escape. They kind of gloss over the fake ID. They gloss over the fake death thing, because that could get them in trouble. But the cops get involved on everything. So for once, Emily's story was investigated truly. It was truly investigated. It was given the time of day that it needed. And turns out, they were able to, just because of the timing, the severity of the case, they were able to go in, get enough evidence, gather enough evidence to the fact that Emily's dad gets arrested, which is probably one of the best outcomes. Like, everything else wasn't doing that. But yeah, it was pretty crazy. From that point on, Jake wasn't charged, partially because they kind of ignored some of the badder parts or the worst parts. But, he's, put into counseling, to say the least, because this was pretty crazy. And Jake is a good guy, and he really just wanted the best for someone he got really close with. He was suspended from the school temporarily for all the stuff he was doing, with the plan of him being integrated back in a year. But they really needed the whole year. Ben tells me that he felt sick for days. He felt genuinely ill and unwell, because he knew what happened, more or less. And he was in tears half the time. He would message Ben if he was okay. He got no response. He would message Jake if he was okay, but got no response. But he knew, and, Ben and Will were talking late one night, a couple days after, that if he didn't say anything, they would have disappeared forever. And then who would have known if they would have been okay? So many families would have been affected by this negatively, and it just would have been a really, really bad situation. And I know that Emily was in a bad situation, but as you can see, it did work out for her. And 6 months later, Jake's different. He's a calmer guy. And he still writes letters to Emily. She's safe in a foster home far away in another town. Jake wants to go see her, but because of the situation, he can't see her. So he writes her letters. Every couple weeks, they write back and forth. Because, she doesn't have a phone, doesn't have anything yet. She might watch like YouTube videos or something, but they essentially don't want her to have any information that, her parents could find and stalk her and reach out or something, because it's a bad situation. And at this time, Ben and Jake have become friends again. At first, Jake was a little bit like, oh man, like the plan could have gone wrong or whatever. And Ben's like, I know I had to do what I had to do. I think deep down, Jake wanted him to spoil it because I think Jake felt like he was in too deep. But over time, they start playing Fortnite again when Ben says, hey, do you want to hop on Fortnite? Or Jake's like, hey, do you want to hop on Fortnite? And Ben's like, yes. And their first Fortnite game on together is just like new. They don't talk about anything that went down. But a couple months later, they eventually Jake starts talking about it, so Ben feels comfortable that okay, he's ready to talk. And he says that he doesn't regret anything. He says he doesn't regret helping her, and he does regret a little bit how he went about it. The truth is, right, Ben kind of gets it. It's someone that he just sees that you care about, you see going through the worst situation, and you feel like you lost all hope, so you have to do something crazy. But now they're friends again. And life is good, and Ben soon is being reintegrated back into the school. They're going to have a whole cover-up story where it's Ben, the reason why he was leaving is because he had some serious illness, and now he's back from medical leave. Jake and Ben still play Fortnite quite often, and every once in a while they'll talk about it, but it's not really a topic that comes up. When it comes up, it's more so something like, Jake saying, hey, I wrote this to Emily, blah, 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 that kind of stuff. And, Ben's like, oh, that's awesome, dude. I'm glad that went well. And other than that, it's a story that never really got leaked, which is great. I've changed a lot of the details, even though Ben, who submitted the story, said that he already changed a lot of the details. I additionally changed more details to make sure that the story can never be traced back. Trust me, I changed it up enough. But, at the end of the day, if you have a friend that you're worried about who's going through a tough situation, the solution usually isn't faking their death. That's going to lead to many, many, many more problems. And it's going to be something where if you wanted to get help, it'd be a lot more complicated because of all the stuff you've done. And if someone needs help and they're not getting the help that they need, then you might need to go to a more aggressive channel, such as, the police, and maybe not just CPS, but you always gotta double down on the routes that can be helpful there. And really just reach out and spread the word and message if you need help. And that's all I can say. I hope you enjoyed today's story. Another story coming out later tonight, I believe. With that being said, I'll see you in the next story time.